Hello, good afternoon everyone. To begin, I would like to pay tribute to Lior Rudaith, an Argentine resident in Israel who was kidnapped and murdered by the terrorist organization Hamas on October 7th. I would like to extend my sincere condolences to his family and would like to request the return of his body so that he can be properly farewelled by them. Baruch Dayan Hamet to him and to all the victims of Islamic terrorism in Argentina and around the world. Today, more than ever, there can be no doubt that the scourge of Islamic terrorism on Israel and the Jewish people is not a problem foreign to us Argentines, but rather it affects us directly. First, because 21 Argentines were murdered by Hamas on that tragic day, 20 more Argentines were kidnapped, and today, 7 months after the attack, there are at least 8 compatriots for whom we still do not know if they are still with us or have passed on to another life. Second, because when a battle is fought between good and evil, between freedom and oppression, between civilization and barbarism, taking sides is not an option among others, but a moral obligation. Today, we are here to remember perhaps the greatest tragedy in the history of humanity. We do so under the name of Holocaust and Heroism Day, and I want to stop to comment with you on this second concept. Heroism. Because I believe that the heroism and virtue of men is the reverse of tragedy and is the only thing that can make the righteous prevail over those who seek to oppress them and steal their freedom, and because I believe that in times of darkness, when raising one's voice is costly and when the majority prefers to turn their back on righteousness for their own convenience, promoting virtue is a commandment and a duty. Today we remember the Jewish resistance in the Warsaw Ghetto, where 300,000 souls were locked up in inhuman conditions for 3 years by the Nazi regime and then transferred to extermination camps. As we all know, we remember that one day in 1943, the prisoners took the few weapons that were there and fought for 27 days. Fighting for their freedom in unequal conditions and with practically zero chances of success. They fought for their freedom in a just cause at all times and in all places. And they chose to die fighting rather than be killed. The fight for freedom, always more powerful than them, has been a constant in the history of the Jewish people and has forged a heroic spirit for that people, a warrior spirit. This is already clear in the sacred scriptures. It is seen in the exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt, escaping from the yoke of the Pharaoh, leaving slavery behind to embrace freedom. The revolt of the Maccabees is clear when, despite being in a clear minority of being the few against the many, the weak against the powerful, they expelled the Greek invader and recovered Jerusalem. The number of soldiers never mattered, but the forces that came from heaven, fighting battle after battle for more than 4,000 years. If you look at them, many were lost, and if you look at the Temple of Jerusalem, it was destroyed twice. The Jewish people persisted, and today, once again, under threat, surrounded by enemies who pursue an objective similar to the objective of those who locked up more than 300,000 souls in the ghetto 80 years ago. Because Hamas' intention on October 7th was the same as that of the Nazis, to directly and deliberately murder innocent people. If they did not do it on a larger scale, it was not because they did not want to, but because they could not. Today, in parallel to these sad events, we see a recognition in the world of both intolerant Islamic fanaticism and anti-Semitism in its different versions. And to make matters worse, we see how all these phenomena are not perceived by the free world with the sharp condemnation and firm action that they demand, but with discomfort and ambiguous gestures. I look around me at the other leaders of the free world, especially the leaders of the great nations that should be the pillars of freedom on a global level, and I see indifference in some and fear in others of standing on the side of the truth. Today the world is silent while there are still more than 100 kidnapped people suffering. of which 8 are fellow Argentines. Not to mention the blatant anti-Semitism that has become common currency on the university campuses of educational institutions that are entrusted with the professional and human training of the elites of the West. I believe that the heroism that we talk so much about and want to promote is also defending the truth, speaking the truth when the truth is silent around us. That is why when the world is silent, we have the obligation to speak, because it is the silence of the good that allows the barbarity of the bad, and because speaking, looking straight in the eye and not turning a blind eye, even though it is difficult, even though for many it is inconvenient, is the only way to ensure that the Shoah is not repeated. And because God will not accept justifications or excuses when it comes to rendering his final judgment, we will not be able to tell him that. But I could not, or that virtue was not convenient at that moment. He will not judge us for what we think, believed or wanted, but for having done the right thing in life. That is why today remembering the Shoah, remembering heroism and denouncing Islamic terrorism is an obligation, because without heroes we are defenseless against an increasingly dark and longer night. To close, I would like to thank Marcelo Mindlin, Jorge Noblovitz and the rest of the authorities of DAIA and the Holocaust Museum for organizing and inviting me to be part of this commemoration at such a difficult time for the Jewish people that demands that we all work back to back. I also want to tell you that Argentina is a historical friend of the Jewish people. We were the first country in the region to recognize the existence of the State of Israel, and today we proudly have the largest Jewish community in Latin America and the 10th largest in the world. We have suffered, together with the Jewish community, the cowardly attacks by the Iranian government, not only against the Argentine Jewish community, but against the entire Argentine people, which, thanks to the persistent efforts of those who seek the truth, are now beginning to become clearer after 3 decades. That is why, in keeping with our history and with what we consider true, we today ratify our spirit of friendship and collaboration with the State of Israel and offer Argentina's candidacy for the international presidency of the International Alliance for Holocaust Remembrance. An institution whose value gains new validity and urgency every day, in a dark moment in which the rest of the world turns its back on Israel, you will find us standing by your side, always. Finally, I would like to conclude with a letter from Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, which I find very pertinent for these times we are living and which should be present in our lives every day. This letter says, "Those who are convinced that their opinions are true and correct must express them constantly and at every opportunity with frankness and without regard to the degree of support they have and the level of opposition they will encounter. Lies need supporters to succeed. Lies need the authority of majorities to supplant what they lack in the rightness of their argument. Truth, on the other hand, will always win out in the end. Even if it takes time, nobility, courage and purity, expressed with all the ardor of conviction and with all the clarity of a sure conscience expressed again and again on every occasion. It will eventually win the respect and esteem of even those who refuse to accept it. The only truth that has been lost beyond recovery is that whose possessors do not have the courage to speak frankly about it. Truth was never defeated by the forces of resistance. It was only defeated when its possessors were too weak to defend it. Thank you very much.